Yeah, we're still looking at the dangers of vehicles crossing over to the wrong side of the road. This particular video, we're examining in more detail when a car or vehicle overtakes another vehicle because of necessity, it will find itself on the opposite side of the road. I do have a separate page on the website that focuses exclusively on overtaking, and I'll put a link to that page in the description section of the video below. Let's have a look at the animation, and then we'll go into some of the real life clips. Here, the driver of the red vehicle is overtaking a truck, and due to the length of the truck, obviously would find itself spending more time on the opposite side of the road in order to traverse the length of the truck. And that exposes it to more danger, seeing that it's spending a lot more time on the opposite side of the road facing oncoming traffic. In this first real life clip, there are a number of signs we can have a look at here that scream danger. Firstly, notice that it's a single lane on the opposite side of the road, and because of that, there's a greater chance or likelihood of vehicles wanting to overtake and needing then to come onto the opposite side of the road. We also see a number of trucks on this road, and trucks, because of the heavy loads that they carry, especially on hills, so whether it's an incline or a decline, a truck travels a lot slower. Obviously, when going uphill, because of the weight that it's carrying, it travels a lot slower, and vehicles are inclined to want to overtake the truck. But likewise, coming downhill, often because of the weight that they're carrying, they have to engage lower gear in order to restrain them building up speed. And because of that, any cars behind them become impatient and are inclined to want to overtake, and so then would come onto the opposite side of the road. So in a situation like this, a scenario like this, you know, there's a great chance that you're going to find vehicles on your side of the road. And that's what we see here. Here's a truck overtaking another truck. There's a dual lane going uphill, and so the camera has done exactly the right thing here. To steer out of the path of danger, he's taken the right-hand lane, and so allows a bit of a buffer zone between himself and any vehicles that are overtaking and coming onto his side of the road. So they do have this lane in which they can go. So he's furthest from point of danger. However, notice as he goes uphill, there's another truck here overtaking. And have a look at the driver of this truck. Stop it at that point. He doesn't even stick close to his side of the road. He's now come far over into this lane. So now he's directly facing a head-on situation with the camera. But notice what the camera does. So this driver is to be commended. He's very alert. Notice what he does. He had already planned an escape route, and so moved into the section of the road where he's out of the way of danger, and so was able to let the truck pass safely. So this is what is meant by an escape route. Always be on the lookout for something like that, which allows you that safety zone into which you can go to allow the danger to pass. So the camera did very well here. Pity we can't say the same for the driver of the truck. In this next clip, what I want to stress are the importance of road markings. As we advance the video, notice these arrows which indicate that any vehicles that are overtaking need to now merge back into their side of the road because of a reason, which we'll see as we just move on with the video. But there are a number of these road markings, and so these road markings say, hey, if you're this side of the road, there's a reason for you to come back onto your side of the road. And as we progress the video, you'll see that the reason for that is that the road now splits into two. So here we have the start of an island section. I notice the driver of this truck totally ignored the road markings, decides instead in his wisdom he's going to pull out to overtake this truck. But now finds himself on the other side of a built-up island. So here we have a built-up island section separating the two lanes, hence the road markings a little bit earlier on to warn that there's a need to merge back onto your side of the road, because now the driver of this truck finds himself in the opposite lane and cannot get back onto his side of the road. So the built-up island section separating the two lanes. Now he's directly head-on path with opposite traffic. Fortunately, this ends without incident. But how stupid is this driver? So we've got to be cautious that people will do ridiculous things on the road. So always be an expectation of that. In this clip, I want to just point out the danger of a blind rise. And so we never want to overtake on a blind rise. But likewise, if we're traveling along, we see a blind rise and there's a lane of vehicles, then note that there could be a good chance that some vehicle behind the blind rise would want to overtake, completely ignoring the fact that there's a blind rise and a solid white line. We can't assume that because there's a solid white line that drivers will obey that and stick to their side of the road. No, there's a danger that some driver will still want to overtake, such as this driver over here, even though his view was limited because of the elevation in the road, but continues ahead and now slams on brakes. Fortunately, the camera moved to the side and was able to avert the danger. Likewise, with a blind rise that limits one's view, the same is true where you've got a bend or a curve in the road, and especially if you're on the outer edge of that curve. We have a truck over here, and although you can't see it in the video yet, there is a vehicle on the other side of this truck that's in the process of overtaking. So just as the camera cannot see that vehicle, the driver of that vehicle won't be able to see the camera. So where there's a bend, as I say, on the outside of the bend, you're at a greater risk because any vehicles wanting to overtake or on the wrong side of the road and have other vehicles in between themselves and the oncoming vehicles, then they're not as visible either to you or you to them. This next clip I'm not going to comment on at all until I've run the clip. And after that, I want to just make a comment. But essentially, I'd like to get your viewpoint on this particular clip. Let's run it first of all. Well, my comment is, I don't know, I'm at a loss for words. How would you describe this? I can only describe this driver as being stupid. But I'd like to get some insight as to what goes through the thinking processes of a person or a driver such as this. And so for me, I battle to understand what sort of reasoning a person would have that makes them feel that they can actually carry out a maneuver such as this. So maybe if you've got more insight into the thinking processes of people, maybe you, a person who takes risks such as this, what is your thinking that makes it acceptable for you to be able to carry out a maneuver like this? Is it that one feels that one's invincible? Perhaps you overestimate your abilities. Maybe it's some substance abuse that you don't perceive any dangers. I'd really like to gain insight into this, and so you're encouraged to leave your comments in the comment section of this video, and that'll also in turn be of help to other drivers on the road to help them to understand the thinking processes of other drivers. So for me, as I say, it's difficult for me to understand why somebody would do something like this. But perhaps there are reasons why people feel they're justified in being able to drive like this. And so it's of help to all of us to understand what these thinking processes are, so that we can perhaps be in a better position to try and understand how other drivers behave. And once we can get insight into that, perhaps we're also better equipped then to expect certain things of drivers out on the road. So please leave a comment in the description section of the video. Let us know what you think either of this driver, or perhaps what you feel makes it justified for a person to be able to drive like this. In this next clip, once again, we have a solid white line as well as a blind rise. And so just to repeat what we saw in the previous video, driver goes ahead, ignores the solid white line, and now is in a situation. I notice that both drivers, in trying to avoid each other, move off the road. And as a result of that, they now land up in a head-on collision. So I'll come back to this in the very last clip of this video, just discussing what would be the best course of action when you are in a situation where you're facing a head-on collision because somebody has overtaken and they are directly in your path. We'll have a look at that in the very last clip. In this clip, I've included it for a couple of reasons. There's a vehicle that's overtaking the camera, so coming down the left side here, and has left it to the last moment in order to try and pull back into his lane. But he's traveling too fast to do that and doesn't have enough of a gap in order to merge back into the correct side of the road, so the direction that he's traveling in. And because of that, slams on brakes, collides with the truck, and as a result of that collision, now finds himself back in his lane, but posing a danger now to any vehicles traveling down this side of the road. So be aware of that where there's a danger, it's not only from those overtaking that are facing you, but it could also be as a result of those overtaking you and traveling in the same direction as you are, because if they do collide with oncoming traffic, then there's a chance that they're going to land up on your side of the road as an obstacle in your path. So that's the one danger to be aware of. What I like to do in order to try and minimize this danger is to try and leave enough of a gap between myself and the vehicle ahead, so that if there are any drivers that are taking a risk and they do overtake you, they do have enough of a gap in order to pull back onto their side of the road. So if you're driving along, you see the driver behind you is quite anxious to get past you. He's driving a bit erratically and he's a bit impatient. Then rather hang back a bit, because that'll do things that it'll encourage the driver to overtake you, and it will also leave more of a gap ahead of you for them to safely be able to pull back onto their side of the road. In this next clip, I just want to point out that when you want to overtake, there's certain things to keep in mind. Now, this driver is doing exactly the wrong thing, and for two reasons. Firstly, he's got this truck ahead of him, and so his range of visibility or view is limited because of the size of the truck. The angle at which he can see oncoming traffic is somewhat limited compared to the camera now, which is a little bit more of a distance from the truck. So the camera is better able to see any oncoming traffic. So he has a better angle by which to look past the truck ahead of him, as opposed to this driver that's right up close to the truck, and now his angle is more limited. So that's the one thing. The second thing is that when you want to overtake and you're traveling at the same speed as the vehicle ahead of you, now you don't have that run-up speed in order to quickly overtake the vehicle ahead. So ideally, When you're going to overtake a vehicle ahead of you, you want to run up and approach the vehicle ahead of you at a certain speed, faster than the vehicle that's ahead of you, because then when you do move out to overtake, you've already got that speed or momentum by which you can now then pass that vehicle. Whereas this driver now traveling at the same speed as the truck, as he pulls out, you'll see when we advance the video, he doesn't have that acceleration to be able to get past the truck. So they're battling now to accelerate and get ahead of the truck, and so he's caught in a situation where he's forced off the road. Just to repeat the point, if you're going to overtake, make sure you have enough of a gap. You actually have this run-up speed to the vehicle ahead, so that by the time you do overtake, you're going a lot faster than the vehicle ahead of you, and so it makes it quicker and easier to overtake and then pull back onto your side of the road. I've included this next clip because we see that this vehicle that's overtaking and is approaching the camo now also is caught for time, and so quickly tries to dash into the gap on his side of the road. So he's quickly dashed into his gap, but he has to do so at quite a sharp angle due to the fact that he doesn't have much space or time to be able to gradually enter his side of the road at a shallower angle. So he's entering at a much steeper angle, and because of that now, the car's induced into a slide, tries to correct, overcorrects, and then lands up on the wrong side of the road anyway and strikes an oncoming vehicle. So just be careful of that, where you can see there is an oncoming vehicle. He doesn't have much space to pull into his side of the road, and so may do so as a radical maneuver and may be induced into a slide, as we've seen in this clip, and land up on your side of the road. In this next clip, what I want to point out is that there are no road markings over here, so it's more difficult for the drivers to distinguish the different sides of the road. So which is your side of the road, which is the opposite side of the road, where's that demarcation point between the two sides of the road. And because of that, it's better in a situation like this for one to travel more towards the side of the road, so at a further distance from the center of the road, because now we'll see in this clip, both drivers think that they're on their side of the road but land up in a head-on collision. So as I say, in a situation like this where there's no clear road markings, then make sure you further from the center of the road and more towards the side of the road, so that there's no danger that the vehicles traveling in opposite directions will overlap their paths. So this is the last clip in the video, and we'll just play it because what I want to discuss here is that when you're facing a head-on situation with an oncoming vehicle, what would be the best thing to do? To stick to your side of the road or move to the side of the road? Let's just play the video. So yeah, both vehicles, both drivers had moved to the side of the road and there was a collision. If I just go back a section, in this particular video, if the driver had been more alert, you would have noticed that the oncoming vehicles moved more towards the side of the road and should have realized that he's now moving off the road, and so could have stuck to his path here so as to miss the vehicle. But what would be the right thing to do? To stay on the road facing the oncoming vehicle, or should you move to the side of the road? Well, that would depend on a number of things and your particular situation at that particular point in time. So it would vary, because when you look at the montage section to follow, you see that there's a variety of situations where there's head-on collision, where both vehicles stay on the road, and there's also a collision or a number of collisions where vehicles have a head-on impact on the side of the road. So there are a few guidelines. One of them is to try and indicate to the driver that you're facing as to what your intention is. So if you're not sure what he's going to do, and now you start swaying between either staying on the road or moving off the road so that you're unsure of which path to take, then for the oncoming driver, he's also going to be as unsure as what you are as to what you're going to do. Whereas if you select a path and you stick to that, then there's a better chance that he'll see that you're consistent in traveling along that path, and so will try to avoid you. So that's one thing. Try and indicate your intentions and stick to that. Obviously, if the situation changes, you stick to your side of the road here, and you see the oncoming vehicle doesn't budge in any way, and there is going to be a head-on collision, well, then you're going to have to swerve off the road. But try to make your intentions clear and to be predictable to the other driver. So that's the one thing. The other thing is, where you can, and there's enough time, to actually flash your headlight just to alert the driver that there is an oncoming vehicle, if for whatever reason he hasn't noticed you. So flash your headlights to see if he'll notice you, and then perhaps and hopefully move off to the side of the road. So that's the second point. If you've got to choose between either staying on the road or moving to the side of the road, that could also be dependent upon whether there's a line of traffic. So if there's a whole line of traffic on the opposite side of the road, then by staying on your side of the road and sticking to the road, and we have an oncoming vehicle, that doesn't leave much of a gap between this oncoming line of traffic and the oncoming vehicle on the wrong side of the roads, because you might be caught between the two, and so you don't have much space for movement either to the left or to the right. You're sort of wedged between the two. So in a situation like that, it might be better to move to the side of the road, because at least you have more space then to try and avoid the oncoming vehicle. So it would vary depending on what your particular situation is at that specific point in time, what other vehicles are on the road, what is the shoulder of the road like as well. If there's enough of a shoulder, then it might be safer to go onto the shoulder, but that may not be the case. Maybe the road here is very uneven, a lot of potholes and so on, so it's dangerous to move off to the side of the road. It could be very sandy and slippery, so that when you do move off to the shoulder, then the car's going to be induced into a slide, and because of that, you could well land up on the opposite side of the road. So that would be even more dangerous. Maybe there's a very steep embankment on the side here, which doesn't allow you much space to move off onto the shoulder section. But as you're driving along, have a look at your terrain and have a look at what your escape routes are, so that if you are suddenly confronted with a situation like that, then you've already planned ahead as to what would be the best course of action, to stay on the road or to move onto the shoulder. You don't want to suddenly be caught unawares, face a situation like this, and now you've got to try and take all these factors into account, because you just won't have the time for that. And that shows the advantage of being able to plan ahead, already have escape route in mind. Now you're faced with the situation, you don't have to now start calculating all these factors. You already know what the terrain is like and what the best course is to follow, and so you can better then take that escape route. please like, subscribe, and get notified.